when the White House becomes a profit engine following the Trump family's expanding business network. During Donald Trump's first term, the public debate largely revolved around hotels, golf courses, and the Trump brand. His second presidency tells a very different story. A growing body of investigative reporting suggests that the Trump family's business interests have evolved far beyond real estate. Today, they stretch into cryptocurrency, strategic minerals, artificial intelligence, defense contracting, cross-border investment, and other industries where the federal government plays a decisive role in shaping policy. That is precisely why a series of recent investigations by the New York Times veteran investigative reporter Eric Lipton has drawn extraordinary attention. The story is no longer about a single billion-dollar deal, nor is it about one controversial investment. The larger question is whether America is witnessing the emergence of an entirely new business model, one in which political power and private financial interests increasingly intersect. That is the real story. The money no longer flows through Trump Organization. For decades, Donald Trump was known primarily as a real estate mogul. But recent financial disclosures suggest that the center of gravity of the Trump family's wealth has shifted dramatically. Instead of apartment towers, luxury hotels, or golf resorts, much of the new financial activity appears concentrated in industries with one defining characteristic. They are sectors in which the U.S. government plays a central role: strategic minerals, cryptocurrency, stablecoins, defense, artificial intelligence, cross-border investment. In other words, whereas Trump's fortune was once tied largely to fluctuations in the real estate market, many of today's reported financial opportunities appear connected to industries whose success depends heavily on federal policy. That shift has become a major focus for historians, ethics scholars, and government watchdogs. The issue is not whether a president is allowed to make money. The more fundamental question is whether someone exercising public power can simultaneously benefit from policies enacted by the very administration he leads. Kazakhstan is only one piece of the puzzle. One of the most closely watched investigations centers on a massive mining project in Kazakhstan. According to reporting by the New York Times, the Trump administration supported a major tungsten development project. From a national security perspective, the objective itself is hardly unusual. Tungsten is a critical mineral used in advanced weapons systems, defense manufacturing, and high-tech industries. For years, both Democratic and Republican administrations have sought to reduce America's dependence on Chinese-controlled supplies of strategic minerals. The Biden administration pursued that objective. The Trump administration has continued it. But the investigation raises a different issue. During negotiations surrounding the project, companies reportedly connected to President Trump's sons and business partners invested in enterprises associated with the mining venture. That is where the controversy begins. President Trump has categorically denied the allegations, insisting that Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump neither participated in nor influenced the awarding of any contracts. He has demanded that the New York Times retract its reporting, calling the investigation defamatory. The newspaper has refused, maintaining that its reporting is supported by extensive documentation. At this stage, these competing claims remain matters of public dispute, not judicial findings. Yet regardless of the legal outcome, the case illustrates a broader concern. When businesses connected to the family of a sitting president simultaneously operate in sectors that stand to benefit from government policy, the issue extends beyond commerce. It becomes a question of conflicts of interest. Cryptocurrency, the new gold mine. If Kazakhstan represents one chapter of the story, cryptocurrency may be the centerpiece. Based on public financial disclosures and multiple investigative reports, digital assets have reportedly become one of the Trump family's most significant sources of recent income. What makes this business model particularly remarkable is that it bears little resemblance to traditional wealth creation. No factories, no hotel construction, no manufacturing. Instead, the focus is on building a digital financial ecosystem. As that ecosystem expands and as the regulatory environment becomes increasingly favorable, its value can appreciate dramatically. That is exactly why ethics experts have raised concerns. On one hand, the administration is helping shape the regulatory framework governing digital assets. On the other, members of the president's family are reportedly positioned to benefit financially from the very industry being regulated. Legally, those two realities may be distinct. Politically, many Americans see them as increasingly difficult to separate.
Stablecoins and the power question.
Another issue attracting growing attention involves World Liberty Financial. According to investigative reporting, the company has developed a stablecoin while the Trump administration simultaneously backed new legislation governing the stablecoin market through the Genius Act. The reports also state that a substantial portion of funding supporting the broader ecosystem originated from investors in the United Arab Emirates. At the same time, Washington was engaged in discussions with Abu Dhabi over advanced AI cooperation and access to cutting-edge semiconductor technology. None of that by itself proves wrongdoing, but it raises what government ethics scholars often describe as the appearance of a conflict of interest. In other words, even without evidence that public authority has been used for private gain, the overlap itself may undermine public confidence. For any American president, that perception alone can become a political issue of enormous significance. Defense, the most sensitive sector. Perhaps the least publicized, but potentially most consequential, area involves defense. Reports indicate that Donald Trump Jr. and Eric Trump have investment ties to several defense-related companies that later received federal contracts after President Trump returned to office. Their representatives have stated that neither man participated in awarding or managing those contracts, and that neither works for the federal government. From a governance perspective, however, the central issue is not who signs the contracts. The more important question is whether government spending priorities, procurement decisions, or national security policies could increase the value of private investments held by individuals closely related to the president. That remains one of the key questions investigators and ethics scholars continue to examine. A new model of presidential wealth? Viewed individually, each transaction may appear explainable. Strategic minerals, cryptocurrency, stablecoins, defense, artificial intelligence, foreign investment. Each can be analyzed on its own merits, but when they emerge simultaneously and repeatedly intersect with businesses or investments connected to the president's family, they begin to form a much larger picture. That is why several historians interviewed by Eric Lipton have argued that the scale and breadth of business activities associated with a presidential family may be without modern precedent in American history. Whether these controversies ultimately lead to legal consequences or political fallout remains uncertain. What is already clear, however, is that they have reignited one of the oldest debates in American democracy. Where should the line be drawn between public power and private profit? Because in the end, the defining question is not whether an American president has the right to build wealth. The more consequential question is whether the public can remain fully confident that every decision made inside the White House serves the national interest, and not business interests connected, directly or indirectly, to the first family.